Nightwaves. The Missing Chapter. Tiffany's Tale by David Irons. Read by roxidrive.
A light night rain fell onto the cracked window screen of the Mark I Golf as the squeaking bald wipers dragged across the glass. Tiffany prayed it wouldn't rain any harder. The convertible's roof, once white, like the car's aging, rusty brown bodywork, was deteriorating with rot from the abrasive sea air. Any worn-through holes were quickly taped up, but the adhesive wouldn't keep the corrosive moisture out. It never did. The car's Sanyo stereo had popped years ago. Now all she had to listen to were the deep, hollow moans of the blown exhaust pipe. Still, even that ungodly noise was better than the mixtape her ex-boyfriend had got stuck in there, bad electro constantly looping on repeat until its untimely death. There were moments in life, moments like this, when she thought back to her ex, Craig, and their time together. Everything fun in the beginning, vacuous and frivolous, everything just how she wanted it, until the relationship became serious. Why did everything always have to get serious? She had met Craig here 10 years ago when she had come to start her new life in Brighton, her new life by the sea, her new life away from, well, the old life, the life that wouldn't go away. She had scrimped and scraped and saved and stockpiled all the money she could from that old life. On paper, she resided in London. Different versions of her resume claim she lived either in that trendy East London E1 postcode or in the sought-after West London W1 postcode, and at times she did live in one or the other, or both. That was when the clapped-out bomb of a car she was driving wasn't a clapped-out bomb, when she could park up somewhere solitary and squat in the back seats. Cheapest rent in London, sleeping in the back of your car. And she had, for 5 years. The brakes whined like an unwanted child as she paused at a junction. The red stoplight beaming through the window screen, a kaleidoscope of cherry-tinted droplets settling when she gave the wipers a break. In the rearview mirror, she checked her fringe, inspected the makeup she had slapped on her face, blushing cheeks, vivid blue mascara, evocative red lips. Yeah, there she was again, the girl from the old life. But not a permanent fixture like she was before. Now that familiar face was just a mask. One she had to wear from time to time to pay the bills, to keep the art gallery going. She'd once heard someone say, "Life isn't a support system for art. Art is a support system for life." Beautiful words, poignant words, truthful words. But art couldn't support life as of late. That's why she was here. That's why, inside, she secretly sighed at having to drive out into the night, chafed at having to wear that mask of the past, again. The internal sigh became external, passing her lips as the deep brown eyes in the rear view filled with a reluctant boredom. Why am I still doing this? She asked herself aloud. The light turned green and she pulled away, the handbrake as limp as the many flaccid cocks she had seen in that old life, and maybe, tonight, in her current life. She wore the mask of the past again because of her dream, the dream of running a gallery and putting that university education in modern art into something practical. That's why she lived on the coast. That's why she'd moved to the seaside, to start again, to surround herself with culture, with people who thought like her, to give herself time to create, to paint, to design. And it had worked. She had done it, had escaped, had found a space, found a studio, had the money, saved the money, had worked her cute little arse off, literally to earn the money. Found commissions, found resident artists, contributors, collaborators. Then life wasn't about money, it was about art, the way it should be, the way it was meant to be. The old life inverted, turned inside out, its pockets emptied, then thrown away, discarded and gone, for what she'd thought would be forever. She had left London, escaped it, used the city and the contacts she had made there to her advantage, raped and pillaged every opportunity. Her clients had thought they were using her. No, she was the one using them. But as she moved forward, as she found the life she'd always wanted, London came back, its sentiments rising like an unclean spirit from a graveyard, sludging after her in a trail of foul, polluted ectoplasm down the M23, wanting the one that got away, like the final girl in a horror movie, back in its clutches. That's when the investors came. That's when prices fluxed. That's when Brighton became London by the sea. That's when the old landlord had been bought out. That's when the new London landlord came in. That's when the rent went up. That's when the gallery, her dream gallery, went from meagerly in the black to deeply in the red. That's when the people she had moved here to be around, the creative people, the cultured and interesting people, had been replaced by the four-wheel driving morons who wanted to be boho in the lanes, wanted to be by the sea because everyone is a bit different. The lifestyle she treasured had become kitsch. It had become cute. It had become a novelty. It had also become expensive. She'd had to move from the gallery to find a smaller space because the rent went up, had to leave there and find a smaller space because that rent also went up, and again, over and over. Her boyfriend Craig, the one who used to be interesting, the one who got the crappy mixtape stuck in her car, said he would support her, said maybe she should give up on her dream, should settle down. That side of life was done. Maybe they could get real jobs, be a real couple, have a baby, and have a baby. Everyone was always growing up and having a baby. Think how nice it would be to have something of your face running around, he had said semi-seriously, semi-jokingly. Fuck that, she said aloud, pulling the Golf down towards the shoreline, parking beneath a street lamp that dyed the concrete a sickening yellow. She would rather be the person she used to be, pull the old trick again, the one she'd managed to keep secret, the one she'd used to earn the money for her dream in the first place. The rain had stopped. The warehouse they were filming in tonight loomed before her like a blackened tombstone under the full moon. She would fight, just like she always had. She would find a way to survive, would do anything to banish the banality of becoming yet another yummy mummy pushing a pram around the lanes, another, oh, back in the day when I thought I was an artist, drinking coffee with all the other yummy mummies in some overpriced corporate-owned cafe. Fuck that, she said again. The thought just about blowing her mind. Her old life as a porn star didn't seem that bad in comparison. She rubbed her eyes, whispered, current life, under her breath. Maybe she could commission some neon 80s synthwave-style photos to sell in the gallery. That could solve some of the money problems. Her friend Simone had recently introduced her cousin, Kirsten. She would be perfect for the job. Retro seemed to be in as a thing at the moment. And Kirsten had the eye, could pull off some decent styling and take a good picture. In some instinctive way, Tiffany felt there was something there. Something in her future with Kirsten. Oi! A female voice squawked as a hand slapped loudly on her window. Tiffany jumped, brain reconfiguring, the old identity shifting in place as she quickly slipped the mask of the past on once more. Come on, where you been? You got your gear on? Nina, her blonde co-star, asked. Tiffany opened the whining car door and stepped out, her long knee-length trench coat falling open for a second, flashing the tight black corset, flimsy panties and stockings beneath. Why, hey, look, we match, Nina jeered, pulling open her long jacket to reveal a similar outfit. Let me have one of those ciggies, Tiffany said. Nina passed her a cigarette, and the pair walked to face the blackened beach, listening to the invisible waves of the sea. Has Bernie set everything up in there? Tiffany asked. I just want to be in and out. Nina laughed. There ain't no in and out tonight, lovey. Bit of the old S&M, innit? Bit of the old kink. The Rube's in there already, waiting for it, he is. He's here already? Tiffany asked. Yeah, Nina laughed. He go on. Said in his message he likes punishment. He likes torment. She took a drag on her cigarette. So I tied the bastard up and came out here for a fag. Tiffany laughed slightly, took a puff on her own cigarette, then sighed. I'm not in the mood for this tonight. Oh, it'll be an easy one, babes. Bernie only wants a 20-minute clip for the website. We don't even have to touch the Rube. We'll let him finish himself off. Tiffany didn't turn to Nina. She just stayed staring out towards the sounds of the sea. Come on, we'll have a laugh. Get it over and done with. We've done it before. It's not like you're working with a noob. Most of these girls now have all the gear and no idea. Not us. Old pros, you and I. Yep, that's true, Tiffany said. flicking the dead cigarette butt toward the beach. Might be an old pro, but will I ever be a retired pro, she thought. Who knows? Come on then, she exhaled the last plume of smoke. Let's get it over with. Hang on, Nina replied. I need a piss. Go inside then, Tiffany said. I hate going in there. That toilet's a shithole. It stinks. I'll just go on the beach al fresco like the way you eat your dinner outside. Tiffany laughed again, more sincerely this time. Don't worry, I've got me wet wipes, Nina said, patting the pocket of her jacket. I won't come in there drip-dried. Go on then, I'm going in, it's cold. Nina walked around to the beach, her high-heeled footsteps slushy in the pebbles. The wind rose as Tiffany strode over to the warehouse's back door, a cold chill whispering up her coat, goosebumping exposed skin. Suddenly, she stopped, her attention caught by an odd sound entwined in the wind, a penetrating, high-pitched crystal whine. It put her teeth on edge, made her bones shake. It distorted with the next gush of cold air, a razor-sharp sound twisting into strange sonorous song. Lullaby-like, comforting, alluring. Words defining in melody. It was calling in tempting female tones. The sounds of a seductress. She heard her name spoken aloud, the syllables sensual, elongated, hidden in the sea breeze. Nina? She called back. The ocean rolled in, the breeze cut briskly. No slushy footsteps now, just the cut of a chilled wind, the turn of the ocean. Silence. Nina? She called again. Nothing. No answering voice. Tiffany backed up, her legs striding faster to the single security light illuminating the warehouse's back door. She pushed the door open and entered the glow of red neon beyond. She moved from a hallway soaked in red neon light to the studio, which was drenched in the scarlet glow. The smell of body odour and rotten sex sessions of the past filled the air. The walls were filled with mounted whips and flogging instruments, chains, rubber masks, the usual S&M paraphernalia. A layer of mist from a cheap fog machine lay around the room. A pale veil dyed by the lights to a boiling blood red. Bernie Raymond, owner of 25 different kink sites ranging from smoking fetishes to hardcore BDSM domination, stood behind a consumer HD camera, tongue out to one side, thick-rimmed glasses on top of his head, trying to adjust the camera's focus. Bernie was a greaseball, a butterball, as slimy as a porn film producer could be. But he paid, and that's what mattered. "Come in, girl," he growled. "We're nearly set up." Tiffany stepped further into the room. In front of the camera stood 2 full-size St. Andrew's crosses, one empty, one occupied. The cross nearest the door bore an ink-blot figure of a man strapped in place, full black rubber suit on, wide, wanting eyes beaming from behind the full-over-the-head mask. "You all right?" Tiffany nodded to him, her tone nonchalant and uninterested. A muffled, "Yeah, I'm all right, thanks," came out all at once. She gave him a nod, took a deep breath, mustered a momentary smile, thought, "Come on, you can do this," then sighed. "It's a bit red in here. You sure that camera can handle it?" Tiffany asked, walking toward the empty St. Andrew's cross, which stood near a table laden with more kinky toys on its furthest side. "Looks good. These lights make everything proper stylish-like."
I bet,
she said evenly, taking her jacket off and laying it in the room's dead space. Bernie drew his head from the camera, soaked in a deep stare at her scantily clad body, then pushed his pudgy face to the camera's eyepiece again. "Might have to be bank transfer tonight, no cash. That all right, girl?" he said. "Bollocks it is. You told me it was cash on the day," an instant anger coming over her. "Oh, yeah, he said, flustered.
I forgot about that. Must have been thinking of someone else.
Piss taker, she muttered. So what are we doing then? She asked, turning to flash an insincere smile at the bound man next to her.
Well, Simon's funded tonight's shoot. Says he's a big fan of you and Nina's work.
Simon, the rubber-clad ink-blot figure, mutely nodded with eager eyes. I thought the only reason you called me in was because Maria disappeared and you were desperate.
Oh, no,
Bernie protested, ungluing himself from the viewfinder. Simon mutely shook his head from side to side, despair in his eyes.
There was some kind of mix-up. I needed Maria for tomorrow night's session. Simon here said he wanted you.
Simon nodded slowly and thoroughly, eyes beaming again.
Simon said in his message, Nina and Tiffany. No doubt about that girl. Simon said he's just moved down from London. His dad has bought a load of property down here. Simon said he's got a lot of money to spend on you girls.
Anger came over Tiffany. Simon says, what we playing, kids' games? Bernie's words rolled over in her mind. Just moved from London, Dad's bought loads of property down here. One of them, she thought, being boho in the lanes with Daddy's money. Her face clenched in fury. She studied the table of sex toys, selecting the biggest, blackest dildo displayed on it, bringing it to Simon, waving it in front of his face. Simon's eyes grew in their sockets like exploding planets, worry projecting from his pupils. This might be more fun than I expected, Simon, she smiled.
I don't want that,
he mumbled, squirming from side to side. Tiffany cockily grinned at him, flashily raising her eyebrows.
Nah, hang on. Where's the other one?
Bernie yelled, readjusting the camera's focus again. Outside having a piss, Tiffany called over.
That dirty feral bitch, he cried. I told her to use the sink if the bog's blocked up.
Suddenly, the door opened and Nina stepped in, as if telepathically called. Everyone went silent at the strangeness in the air. Nina's features stayed in shadow, the animated girl from the car park gone, a stiffened mannequin standing in her place. Nina shivered. She no longer wore her jacket, just her corset, panties and stockings. She kinked her neck, and a wincing crack came from her vertebrae as she readjusted herself. I'm okay, she croaked. Just cold. It won't take long to warm up in here, Tiffany said, feeling the hot neons taking their toll in the small studio.
Tell me about it, Bernie moaned. I'm the one paying the bloody electric bill.
Nina walked in and looked around, her eyes distant, the room seeming to take on an alien quality to her. She gazed at the bondage gear vacantly, as if not understanding, as if these things were foreign to her. Everyone paused to watch her, sensing the oddness she emitted.
You, smoke anything funny out there, girl?
Bernie asked. She turned to him. It seemed to take a moment for her to realise he was talking to her. She stared into his eyes, glared at him in a way Nina normally never would. Then something reconnected inside her, and she spoke. Nah, just in my own world. Come on then, let's get going. It seemed the old Nina had returned. Tiffany stood to one side of Simon, Nina to the other, waiting for Bernie's direction.
Right, old Simon doesn't want anything too heavy. You girls do a performance like. Get him in the mood, get him stiff, then take those whips and give him what for being a dirty boy.
Simon nodded vigorously, mumbled something like,
Yeah, that's what I want. Trippy bird, trippy bird, trippy bird.
All at once. Tiffany threw the huge rubber dildo down. Simon visibly sighed in relief, apparently not ready to be treated that bad. Bernie, Nina asked, walking towards him. Can I start solo at first, just for a bit? I've been working on something special.
I don't know. If we just stick to the script.
The script, Tiffany thought.
We need to get this shot ASAP. No messing about.
He abruptly stopped talking, staring at Nina. Tiffany looked at her co-star's face. A sudden flash of nocturnal yellow shimmered in Nina's eyes. Something illuminating from inside her, pushing hypnotically outward and moving in Bernie's direction. The veins on Nina's face rose from beneath her flesh, a bioluminescence glowing within them. Bernie stood stunned as Nina started slinking toward him. He seemed unable to move, caught in her gaze. As Nina moved in on Bernie, Tiffany saw 5 deep bloody gouges running down the skin of Nina's back. Tiffany opened her mouth to say something, but Nina spoke first. I can start, right, Bernie?
Sure,
he muttered. He looked woozy in the girl's stare, seemingly unable to do anything but passively agree. Nina turned and winked at Tiffany. All of the anomalies in Nina's face disappeared. The radiating veins, redacted, vanished as if never there, disappearing beneath her skin. Her eyes suddenly went back to normal. She was Nina again. She flipped her hair at the porno producer. "Turn the camera on, Bernie. I'll give you a show you will never forget." She grinned slyly. Bernie moved back behind the camera, pressed the record button, sunk his face in the viewfinder, focused as Nina walked away, and gasped. Tiffany knew he must have noticed the blood-filled claw marks on Nina's back as she did. His head shot up, and he looked at her without the camera lens. "You're back!" was all he managed to get out. Nina's eyes pulsated with the deep yellow light again. She threw an angry glance back at Bernie. "Just record," she snarled. Mesmerised, he did. Tiffany stared at Nina, watching as she approached Simon, smiled and ran a hand down his rubber outfit. The man quivered in pleasure, his eyes clamping shut. Nina turned to Tiffany, fast, at a speed Tiffany had not expected, already in front of her, already in her face. "Let me take this one, babes," she said, looming closer, backing Tiffany up, making her step onto the St. Andrew's cross behind her with a bump. Nina grabbed Tiffany's left wrist, pinned it up, buckled the leather cuff in place, and just as quickly did the same with the right wrist. Now Tiffany was trapped, confined, imprisoned, all in the flash of an eye, a yellow, glowing eye. "It's all right," Nina said, moving in, unexpectedly kissing Tiffany passionately on the mouth. Tiffany gave in to her, thought of the camera, thought of the show, put her tongue in Nina's mouth and kissed back. Tiffany winced, tried not to show her revulsion on her face. Jesus Christ, what had Nina eaten? Her breath was deeply, heavily, nauseatingly nautical, the stench of rotting fish and sunbaked seaweed. Nina pulled away, a smile stretching over her face. "You'll enjoy this," she hissed. Worry pulled at Tiffany as her hands rotated like the twin engines of a jet in the leather cuffs that bound her. Nina moved to the centre of the set, between the crosses, dropped down to her knees, stared into camera, mouth slightly agape, lips wanton. She caressed her breasts, pulling down the corset to reveal them, fondling each one for the camera. She rode up on her haunches, spread her thighs, threw the removable gusset of her panties aside, exposed herself, touched herself, warmed herself up. Bernie shifted side to side, enjoying the show. Nina smiled, groaned, pulled her labia apart, and then pissed all over the floor. "Jesus Christ!" Tiffany whispered, looking at the black liquid pooling at Nina's feet, seeping around her heels. Black because of the red neons above, she rationalised. It had to be. It had to be. Nina rose, wiping herself clean with the side of her hand, and moved over to Simon. Bernie, sweating behind the camera, licking his lips, pressed a button on the fog machine. A shot of mist burst over the floor with a ghostly pshh. Tiffany could see Simon visibly flinch, his expressive eyes beaming real fear through the mask now. When he tried to mumble something, Nina brought up a piss-dripping finger and shushed him with it. She writhed on the spot, moving closer to him. The stink of her urine hit the air. The foul discharge carried the same aroma as her rancid breath, only stronger. She rubbed her blonde hair against Simon's groin, the protruding nub in his pants pulsating with primal physical passion. She ran a tongue up the black slickness of his rubber suit, moved to his lips. The thought of the smell of her kiss went through Tiffany's mind again. Nina went in to kiss Simon, then stopped, teasing, position held. That's when Tiffany saw Nina's hands, noticed the transformation that had taken place up her arms. 2 long-sleeve tattoos, like all the young American porn stars had nowadays, had just magically inked themselves there, but they hadn't. Slick black skin, oily, covered in glowing pulsating veins like the bioluminescence of some deep-sea creature had appeared. Nina's red-painted fingernails were gone, replaced by fingers armed with what looked like menacing black icicles, needle-tipped pointed claws instead of fingers. Tiffany screamed, "What the fuck is wrong with your hands?" She flinched away, still bound by the wrists, her legs kicking. "Bernie!" she yelled. "Bernie! Bernie!" Bernie was frozen stiff with fear, still looking through the camera's eyepiece. "Get me off this fucking thing now!" Tiffany hollered. "Bernie!" Nina just turned to Tiffany and smiled, her eyes glowing as if a bonfire burned inside her brain, the yellow flames licking against the inside of her head. "Don't worry," she hissed. "You're next, babes."
Nina turned her attention back to Simon, exposed, bound, with no way out of the cuffs that held his wrists and ankles. Tiffany saw his eyes in the mask, the terrified tears washing his cheeks. One tear caught the outside of his mask, rolling down the chest of his rubber suit. Nina smiled at Simon's distress, then plunged her black claws into his shoulders, piercing his suit and his skin. A muffled cry came from below the mask as in one slicing movement, in one fell swoop, Nina ripped her knife-like nails down to his abdomen. Blood ejected from the sliced rubber-suited man, showering Nina, who grinned with elongated, sharp teeth that didn't resemble her own.
What in the hell happened to her out there?
Tiffany wondered desperately. Nina reached through the flowing blood, through the slit-open rubber suit, pulled at Simon's opened belly, took reels of intestines out, chewed and devoured them, wolfing them down, her new teeth diamond-sharp, making quick work of the meaty strands. She threw her neck back greedily, gagged and retched and heaved as she consumed the insides of Simon's gut. Bernie, petrified and quivering, rose from behind the camera. He held a hand out with a shaking pointed finger as if he was going to say, "What are you doing, girl?" But he weakened and ran his hand through his thinning hair, face curling to a grimace as he viewed the evisceration through his own eyes rather than through the camera lens.
Fuck's sake, Bernie, help me!
Tiffany screamed. Nina's head jerked up, her headlight bright eyes blinding Tiffany, sensed the movement from Bernie and turned, eyes beaming over her shoulder, watching him back away. Bernie started to bolt for the door.
No, you bastard!
Tiffany yelled, pulling against her restraints. Bernie didn't make it. Before he could get the door open, Nina was on him, her slender legs and arms wrapped around him in a way he had never fantasized, razor-tipped claws tearing into his throat, shredding across his skin, exposing his voice box, vocal cords dangling down to his chest as she drew the claws away. A deep gurgle came from Bernie. He lost his balance and fell backwards, landing on Nina, his fat frame winding her, giving him enough time to stand up, to grab his profusely bleeding neck, to look around the room, to stare at Tiffany, to hear her screaming for his help before he staggered out the door, locking it behind him.
You bastard! You bastard! You bastard!
Tiffany howled. Nina rolled onto all fours where she remained poised, spider-like. Tiffany felt like prey trapped in Nina's web as she readied to make a move, licking her lips, her tongue flapping like a wriggling eel. Tiffany had to get out of there. She had to be her own hero. There was no choice. She had to do it. On the table of kinky toys to her left, she spotted one thing that could help, one thing that could save her. With everything she had, everything she could muster, Tiffany yanked her left hand as hard as possible, but nothing happened. She was still trapped. Nina slithered forward, her eyes like fiery hooks that had sunk into the sockets, her sharp teeth snagged on an endless smile, her tongue lolling and lapping. Tiffany kinked her left arm awkwardly. This time she put all her weight into it, yanking her arm as hard as she could. Her hand slipped free of the tightly buckled cuff, shot forward as a sickening, dislocated pop came from her thumb, and a tremor of sharp pain ran down her arm. Nina leapt from the floor like an animal, arms out, ready to engulf her, but Tiffany, thinking fast, reached her injured hand toward the waist-high table next to her and grabbed the only thing she could use to protect herself, a 14-inch blade, a dagger used for Bernie's BDSM Edge Play series, Sluts That Cut. Its only function to tease and bring fear to a bound participant until tonight. Tiffany swung the knife in a huge arc. At head height, with all the force she had, her limp, dislocated grip was barely good enough to do the damage needed, but the sharp knife did the job, slicing roughly across both Nina's eyes, slitting the pair and horizontally dividing the bridge of Nina's nose with a red gush. The lights in Nina's eyes went out, their fluorescent yellow colour spraying from the sockets like the insides of a day-glow rave stick. She screamed as she fell, a wild, devilish, banshee-like scream, savage-sounding, more of a siren than a scream. Siren, like something from the sea. It had to have come from the sea, Tiffany thought. Nina had been fine until she had gone down to the sea. Nina reeled back, blinded, swinging at the air, her mouth full of strangely sharp teeth filling with black viscous liquid that looked identical to what she had peed on the floor. She hit the wall near the door, deep noises emanating from her insides as she braced herself and howled towards the ceiling. Tiffany watched as Nina's belly expanded, grew from the inside. Black liquid ran down the insides of her legs, her blonde, cobwebbed pubic hair clumped into a dark mess. Nina's inhuman scream started sounding more human as the thing controlling her bubbled in her stomach, blew it out to absurd proportions, then forced itself out of the tubes it must have entered as Nina had urinated into the ocean. A horrific black bulge grew from her vagina, pulsating, living, glowing veins pushing from its internal nucleus. The bulge branched out, webbed down Nina's legs like living tendrils of dark ivy, braced herself as it slopped fully from her insides and puddled into a quivering mass on the floor. Nina, all used up, a puppet with cut strings, buckled to the floor in a tangled heap of limbs, more dead now than she had been when the creature had used her to live in, to incubate in. Tiffany, stunned to silence, tried to reach up and undo the last leather cuff that kept her in place, tried to free the right hand, the hand she used to write with, the hand she used to paint so many canvases with, the hand she could use the dagger to finish off the thing that had crawled from Nina with. But the pain from the dislocated thumb had set in, had frozen her left hand into a motionless mitt she couldn't control. She stumbled clumsily, awkwardly, ineptly with the buckle. The quivering black mass, the foul thing from the sea, drew towards her now, sliming across the floor, leaving a disgusting snail trail behind it. As it reached her high heels, Tiffany moaned, tried to kick at it, but it reared up and globbed around her ankle. She screamed, and its grotesque, soulless coldness smothered her, her skin cringing, repulsion washing over her. She batted at the leather cuff, at the last locked clasp that would set her free, the fingers of her left hand as useless and inanimate as a plastic doll's. The rolling mass formed into a pawful of needle-sharp claws that sank into her skin. As her blood flowed over it, she could feel the creature tremble in excitement. Tiffany screamed long and hard, her throat blowing, torn and ragged. She tried to kick against the foul thing, tried to boot it away from her leg, but it reached out with black tendrils and prized her legs apart. Instinctively, she tried to lash at it with her useless left hand. It wrapped itself around her wrist, pushing it up on a stiff limb of sticky blackness, holding her in place, vulnerable and spread-eagled. She looked down at the thing, watched as a face grew on it. Its features blank at first, slowly morphing into recognisable form. The face was her own. It whispered to her, "Tiffany." Its dull grin widening.
Think how nice it would be to have something with your face running around,
her ex-boyfriend had said. Here it was, the child her ex had wanted, a nightmarish, disgusting sea spawn, destroyer of lives, vanquisher of freedom, rolling up her legs, hissing her name, Tiffany. Never wanting her to go, binding her, trapping her, forcing itself on her, forcing itself in her. She screamed louder, more now than ever before, her vocal cords shot, the muscles in her neck tight, the black marine intruder slithering to her crotch, tearing through her panties, finding the hole it was never born from and entering. Screams turned to disgusted horror, the cold, stinking, slimy wetness filling her, crawling inside, higher and higher, the inverted birth of dark recess nightmare, pain like acid rain falling through her, foul sea semen moving through her. The creature's scummy surface oozed through the portal of her body, settling into places that shouldn't be touched. Baby overcoming mother. Suddenly she was a mother, its mother, impregnated by a grotesque liquid fetus, belly expanding, amniotic sac filled, a new life force inside her, a life force that did indeed force, penetrating deeply, pulling itself forward into a new, wet, warm interior world, pressing out into further tunnels, through the valves to the lungs, through the veins around the organs. Its new wiring replaced Tiffany's old wiring. The creature that had possessed her co-star Nina as a preview now took control of Tiffany as tonight's main attraction. It wrapped around Tiffany's brain, pulled the strings in her head, held the reins. There was no more Tiffany, only the thing that had entered Nina, that had killed Simon and Bernie, only the sea siren. Tiffany hung suspended from the St. Andrew's cross, dangling as the invader settled into its new home. Her body's new owner manipulated the dislocated finger back in place and undid the strap that held her to the cross. Finally, she was free, but trapped inside, her own movements replaced by the movements and will of the vile black siren.
She flexed, kinked her neck, became accustomed to her new body. stared into the still recording camera, eyes blazing, bared saber teeth gleaming, eyes creating electron trails on the camera's lens as she walked to the studio door, high heels leaving triangular imprints in the pooled blood seeping into the floor. She grabbed the door handle, ripped the lock free with demonic purpose, stepped over Bernie's dead body in the hallway, and left the studio, walking into the night, phosphorescent eyes burning, following the call that pulled the others like her, pulled them towards the new girl who had come to Tiffany's gallery, the girl they really wanted, Kirsten.
Nightwaves by David Irons is available from Cosmic Egg, an imprint of John Hunt Publications. The music was by Tacta, and the copyright of the story is held by David Irons and Metropole Film Productions.